It is very significant to note that these two words appear here, that they would be for signs and for seasons, and that these times are also for days and for years. So this is how we know Yahuwah's calendar, according to what we see in the Shemayim. We've already talked about this in great detail, so I'm not going to go through all of it. But the point of bringing this to the forefront in this study is to remind everyone that the significance of the signs in the Shemayim that we are to look for, they have to be light. Today, many people go by what is called the astronomical new moon. And this is based off of modern science. This is used by NASA. This has become, the standard for use in our culture today. However, in the ancient world, this is not so. In the ancient world, this was known as the end of the month, the time of the no moon, the time of the dark moon, the time when the moon had disappeared and there was nothing to observe in the Shemayim, in the heavens. And we know that this time can last from anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 days. And then when the moon begins to manifest yet again, and the light hits the moon, and it is time to sound the shofar, we can see the sign. And it happens right in the evening at the beginning of a new day. Simple to note that this is the time period just from the scriptures alone, because the terminology Rosh Chodesh refers to the rebuilding of the head. The word Rosh doesn't just mean the beginning or the first or the new moon, but the word Rosh means the head. And the word Chodesh means to rebuild or to renew. So if we're rebuilding or renewing the light, it has to be the very first piece of light that happens at the rebuilding of the moon phases as it is becoming full and then as it begins to wane. So it has to be within that 29.5 days of the moon being lit up by the sun. It has to be the first day that it receives its light. So it is very important to note this so that we keep the right day. Now, many people reference that modern Judaism uses what they call the astronomical new moon, but this is not true. This is actually not true. Modern Judaism is based upon the calendar that is used, and the Jewish calendar is used as a reference to the Torah calendar. It is based upon the Torah principles. But what happened is that the Yahudim were going to be kicked out of their land. The people that are called Jews, they were kicked out of their land. And because they were kicked out of their land, the elders of the Beit Din, the Sanhedrin, the court, the great court that would be in Jerusalem, they came together and decided that time could no longer be kept at the right time periods, because different people in different regions see the new moon and they see the beginning of the year at different time points. And so that all of Israel would be in discord. They would be keeping all their days on different days. So therefore they came up with a mathematical formula to try to predict the actual time period that the moon is visible. So if people do their proper study, the people who are referencing this time as being the new moon, they would realize that in fact, according to Yahuwah's word, it is the time of the no moon, it is the time of the dark moon, it is the end of the month, it is not the beginning of the month. So anyway, we are looking for a sign. Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1. Guard the month of Abib. It's very simple. In the English, it just seems very simple. It's not a lot there. Just guard the month of Abib. So if you can find out when Abib is, guard it. But in the Hebrew, there's so much more detail. It says, Shamar et Chodesh ha'Aviv. Shamar means to look for, to observe, to guard, and to look narrowly for, searching for. And then it is followed by the word et, the Aleph Tal, that word that we talked about that is usually called a place designator, and sometimes it is translated as such words as oath or a sign. So here we see that we're to look for the sign. What is the sign? We remember in Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, Yahuwah created lights to be for othot, for the signs, plural, and for the Moedim. So we're looking for the sign. Shamar et Chodesh. That word Chodesh refers to the month, but it also refers to the renewal of the month. It means both things. The word Chodesh can mean to renew or to refresh. And so therefore, it means to renew and to refresh the month is started over again. It is interchangeable with the Hebrew word Yereach, which refers to the Yarach, which is the moon. And oftentimes Yereach is spelled Yarach, that means moon specifically. So therefore we know that these two revelations refer to the renewing of the moon. And we're going to look at that even further. So therefore we know that when the new moon is, we know we can, in other words, the point of all this is that we can know for sure when Yahuwah's appointed times are. It is not beyond our comprehension. It is not too far for us or too hard for us to grasp. It is not, some people try to make these things so complicated. They try to create these various concoctions for what they think the calendar is all about. But the reality is, it's all right here in the book. It's written very simplistically in the Hebrew, and anyone can find this information out. You can look it up in concordances. You can do things like that. And even in the English, you get enough information to know that it's in the 7th month. All the English translations say it's in the 7th month. A lot of them even translate the word Chodesh as new moon. So it's very simple to find this information. It is directly tied to the moon. Yahuwah's calendar is in the heavens, in the Shemayim. And he also uses signs on the earth, as we've discovered, such as the Abib, the ripening of the barley heads. Because it says, to Shamar et Chodesh ha'Abib, to look for the sign of the renewal of the moon that happens during Abib, at the month of Abib. Abib, that word literally means when the barley is a stage of development of barley. When the barley is in a stage of development, when its heads can be roasted with fire, yet it's still tender and green. It hasn't fully ripened, but it's ripened enough that it can be roasted on the fire as an acceptable offering to Yahuwah. Then it is called Abib. So it is in a specific time, and that happens in what people call the spring. Okay, so that is very important to understand. We're to look for the moon that happens during that time when the barley is Abib. It should also be noted that that term Rosh Chodesh, not only does it give us the raw definition in the Hebrew, in the Ivrit, of what the new moon is, but the very term Rosh Chodesh refers to the crowning of the head, the crowning of the Rosh, referring to the birthing of an infant. So when an infant comes into the world, generally it comes in head first, and that is called crowning, and that is the reference point of the Rosh Chodesh. That word Chodesh comes from the root Hadash, which means to make new. Chodesh all by itself means to refurbish and to renew and to make new. And the example that is given specifically for Chodesh is to refurbish and to make polish, referring to literally polishing a sickle which is used for harvesting grain. And this is why that the Chodesh, the new moon, that first sliver of the moon, looks like a sickle in the Shemayim. Remember, he made signs to be in the heavens, and these signs, the sign of the sickle, lets us know when the harvests are coming, because all of the feasts are dependent upon the harvest in the land. But not only this, but Rosh Chodesh has its equivalent in Aramaic as Rosha Chodesha. And Rosha in Aramaic, Aramit, not only does it mean the first point or the chief point or the beginning or the head, but it also literally means the edge of a blade or the edge of a sickle. So then in Aramaic we have more witnesses. But Rosha also means the tip of the head, the tip of the sword, and the tip of the finger, referring to the fingernail. And it is very clear that that sliver in the Shemayim, that sliver in the sky, is a picture of the fingernail. It is very obvious when you look at the Aramit, when you look at the Aramaic. So Rosha Chodesha in the Aramaic is very clear. It is the refurbishing of the tip of the blade, the refurbishing of the sickle. So in Aramaic and in Hebrew, we see the dual representation of the idea of the sickle, of the fingernail, of the blade. It continues on and on and on. And furthermore, we know that it has to be this point because, like we said before, Yahuwah created the lights to be for the signs. So when that first sliver is seen in the western sky at evening, That will be the new moon day. That will be the first day of the month.